Are now live. Hello, everyone. I we're just watching people kind of flood in here. Oh, look at all the people joining. Hey, Mason, Tracy, Celia, Mary. Okay, the recording will be posted later, so I don't want to. Well, we can get started, so people can always come back and rewatch if you missed the beginning. Anyways, I have been wanting to have this conversation with Alexis probably for like last 12 months. Alexis's writings on sort of history, American history, political history of America, something that I am, as everyone knows who reads me, am quite fascinated by. She was one of the first Substacks I discovered and just kind of started like reading and following and I don't know, something I liked the way that she was looking at history. It helped kind of sharpen some of my insights for some of my early writing after I launched my Substack. And so I wanted to, just have a conversation with her. I don't really have an agenda of things to talk about. I just think there's this like really interesting intersection in sort of our intellectual approaches that I think is very generative and maybe can like lead to some like interesting places and insights. So hi Alexis, welcome to
Hi.
my Substack live.
That was such a nice introduction. Thank you. I didn't know
Thank you.
that. That's very kind.
Oh, I'm trying to demonstrate like some respectable intellectual culture again because I feel like we've lost it.
It's true. Well, it's interesting because I feel like sometimes people think that I only exist within these sort of like elite institutions like think tanks. I'm the American history columnist at the New York Times Book Review and all these things, but I feel at the same time that we don't have this, that
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
my sweet spot intellectually, I've realized, is somewhere between these spaces. And it's
Mm,
constantly, I don't like to get I love to get lost in thought. And I
yeah,
spend most hours alone thinking and reading and parsing and writing and all of that. But I spend the rest of the time really trying to understand how it lands. And I think that and so it's especially nice to hear, like, I know that I've been to graduate school, I have all the things, I wrote the books, I know I can do
and all
those
the
things,
stuff.
right, but I don't really know that I can just connect with someone who randomly happens upon my Substack and has come from a completely different world and
Yeah,
finds these points of connection, and that's all I want. Because I
yeah,
think everyone is, maybe
yeah,
not morally equal, maybe not a lot of
yeah,
things, but they all have the
yeah,
capacity to learn, but it's your fault if you don't,
yeah.
it's the
Yeah,
fault of the historian.
what you're describing to me is something that I think I think it's like the most important conversation to be had in intellectual culture, in intellectual elite culture. This sort of phenomenon was like, I mean, the first time I kind of started thinking about it, I will give credit to a theoretical physicist, Sean Carroll, and
Oh, I love
his
Sean
mind, and
Carroll.
yes, and
I
his
stayed in his apartment once.
oh wow. So yeah, listening
Yeah.
to his Mindscape podcast and he's been one of the, shining intellectual figures that sort of lamented a lot of the sort of compartmentalization of inquiry within the academy, right? We talk about like the epistemic crisis in society. Well, there's actually like an epistemic crisis in the academy as well, which is the over specialization of thought, right?
Mhm.
Which has sort of led to,
And the
I think,
elitist exclusion of certain thoughts. So, like the presidency,
yeah,
for example,
yeah,
it's not tolerated. I had to sort of like hide that under political history.
absolutely, exactly, exactly. So, like, I mean, and like even me, like, I think I kind of embody that sort of in my own sort of domain. Like, obviously, I come from Silicon Valley, like former engineer, more engineering mindset background, but like, I'm like kind of trying to sit at an intersection too to like provide like a rigorous perspective that sort of looks across the sociocultural divide that sort of grounding expertise tends to sort of like bias you towards privileging, right? And so that's been something that I'm like, and honestly, like having conversations with you and reading you, which is like kind of like a kind of almost an unnatural sort of like epistemic gravitational field that you would expect someone like me on my trajectory to have, has been something like I've been trying to like sort of like work into my like intellectual like exercise. It's like yes,
Yeah,
yes. So,
totally.
anyways, I
Totally.
don't know
It's
if you.
and that's hard. It's hard to challenge ourselves. Like, sometimes I will see something about tech or I will see something about AI and I'll just like feel myself resist it or not, your mind kind of my mind at least with subjects that I'm not, necessarily working in or inclined to, naturally or was exposed to that I do kind of shut off a little bit. And so then I try and think, no, but you just have to find your people. That's the
Yeah,
thing. It's all about storytellers. And then you figure out how to interact and it without fail enriches my work without fail. I find something and like I am so glad I did that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Wow. So, I mean, okay, okay, like we've proven to our audience that Alexis and myself, we sort of occupy a similar perch in our epistemic ecosystem. So
Yes.
now from this divine provenance of intellectual sorts, let's talk about what's going on in our country.
Mm, yes, I guess we must.
Yeah. Yeah.
um it is, we're the longest running republic.
Yeah.
We've had a very good run. A very good run. I hope that we continue. I think, as a historian and as a person, I obviously have been thinking about a lot of people don't realize as they shouldn't, there's no real reason to, that our 250th is rapidly approaching.
Yes,
And
next year. We're
yes, and
yeah.
it's happening. It's all happening. 1776. For some of us, it's 1775 because that's when the first, when the Declaration of Independence happened at the second meeting in Philadelphia. So I've been thinking a
Mhm.
lot about the first this year, and I absolutely thought that this would be different. It's sort of like it's like getting to some big event that you've waited for almost your entire life and certainly my entire professional life.
Yeah,
I didn't know exactly, trajectories are always strange and it's hard to talk about these
yeah,
things. Everything makes sense in retrospect. It's
yeah.
everything
Yeah,
morally
what do
like
you think
adds
that
up.
is? Like, what do you think that feeling is? Because like, I feel the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is it like like, there's something about next year being the 250th anniversary of the United States, like, in my soul, that, like right now feels, like, heavy. Like, I mean, I don't know whether to feel, like it's not, like, sadness per se, it's, like, heavy. It's this
It's
sort of
heavy, it's overwhelmed and sort of like I don't know how to do this. Like I don't know how to perform 250th or how to engage with
yeah,
it. And I think
yeah,
that that's the failure of, it's a failure of leadership. And obviously, the commander in chief, as by default, is our historian in chief. But then going back, what you have here is I was so excited. 5 years ago, these meetings started about our 250th within the history world. And
yeah.
about 3 years ago, I signed up and I began working on this at New America, and I planned this whole discussion tour, and it was fantastic. 13 stops for the 13 colonies, and a lot of like open-ended questions. And so I was approaching it from like a real intellectual curiosity space rather than talking all the time, which is sometimes what I
Mhm.
do. And I wanted to engage with different kinds of stakeholders, and that was great. But you had all these people who were like, I don't know. And there was a lot of hemming and hawing, and very quickly I realized like, oh, they don't know what's going to be allowed. And
Yeah,
then there was a lot of like 2 years ago, plans were scrapped. Everything was reoriented. But at New American in general, my whole hope and dream, like I was looking forward to this like Y2K was how big it was to me. Like the only other thing I can think of is like it
yeah,
was such a big deal. And I wanted it to represent three things.
yeah,
And you know this because I talk about this a lot, which is pride in the founding, a reckoning for the ways we've fallen short. You have to say those
yep,
two things really
yeah,
close together.
yeah,
and then aspiration towards a better future, towards a
Yeah.
better vision of America. And instead, what I'm just being pummeled with is
Yeah.
nostalgia, nostalgia, nostalgia,
Yeah.
and this revenge
Yeah.
train to nowhere against other countries,
Yeah.
against parts of our country, against our founding ideals,
Yeah.
against basically anything good from the progressive era. And so it is one of
Yeah.
these things where I am like, I think it feels heavy because
Yeah.
it feels like that song. What's that song? I only threw this party for you. That's like very popular. Like
Yeah.
that's sort of what it feels like. It's a little bit heartbreaking. You don't know what to expect. And you don't know what to do. And
Mhm.
so I think what we all have to do, all of us across the board, unfortunately, is sort of take personal
Well,
responsibility.
can I, like, really jump in with some really
Please.
interesting philosophical insights, like,
Yes.
that you're drawing me towards? So, like,
Yeah.
one of the ways, like, when we think about, like, our relationship with America, right?
Yes.
What is America, right? You'll people will define it, right, as institutions, right? Or the culture, like, we construct a descriptive category of what America is. But, like, what I recognize that you do when you define America in your mind, which is the same way I envision it, which is like a very, like, romantic ideal. It's envisioning America as like a processual entity across time,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Evolutions are good.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, like you are part of it. Like, it's actually like, whether you believe in God or not, it's a greater power that lives above you. That it's like the accumulated effort of, like, multiple generations, and, like sacrifice, good and ill, right? Like,
Yes.
it's a procession. America is a processual category. And
But
when you
Mike, I have a
recognize it,
question from a
well, yeah,
philosophical standpoint.
okay.
When did you become aware of this? Because when I think about the privilege of being raised in, so I am the, um, this is already out there. So I hesitated because I was like, oh no, I'm going to get a bunch of crazy stuff, but it's already out there. I am the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so I was aware there were other countries as a child, but I was not aware kind of what it meant to be American and how incredibly privileged I was. So I obviously didn't hear about the Holocaust for a long time. I just knew it as a word,
Mhm.
and I knew about certain things like the Civil War. But I grew up in California, and so
Mhm.
you learn about Native Americans like welcome us at Thanksgiving. You don't learn about the missions and all the terrible things for a while. So I think as I became aware of America as this romantic ideal, it also became it presented to me as something that was just a bittersweet realization. So I wonder when you also had this kind of awareness
Yeah.
come.
Oh, I mean, I don't I've just, oh, fuck, I mean, you want me to go back in my head? You want
I'm a little. I'm curious. I've been thinking about it.
I hate talking about myself. So little is known about the origin story of my rock in the world.
I know. Well, it's hard when
Um,
you're on the internet because you're like, I'm
yeah.
gonna say no, I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna,
No, I
that
mean,
would be too. But you want to. And by the way, it's very
yeah, I
funny
mean,
to see that everyone who really does listen, not in a bad way, but the comments are
well,
like,
no, I
"Oh,
mean,
that's textbook Mike. That's textbook Alexis."
yeah, I'm, like, sensitive, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kinda, like, audacious in, like, the way I sort of show up to the world, but, like, I really don't want people to think me a narcissist, so, you kind of, like, I'm like, I don't, like I don't, like, try to showcase my life, right? And sort of the way I sort of construct my world. So, like, when I talk about my life, I usually talk about it in terms of, like, moral growth. So, like, my
Mm.
relationship with Silicon Valley, right? Like, my relationship with, like, like, various, like, features and textures of my life and my family. I kind of show that publicly because I feel like that's, like, what, like, matters, as opposed to sort of, like, the vanity of, like, how, like, you know, what a career trajectory I had and how much
Yeah.
money I made and, like, all this other stuff. I like, try to, like, if there's, like, a way of, like, honestly, like, intentionally curated my public image, just this is me being, like, brutally honest. It's been to sort of be like, look, I mean, I think I mean well in the world, and I get that I'm trying to stand out because I think I have things to say, and someone might mistake that for narcissism and egotism. And so like I'm not gonna like show you other parts in my life as
There's a
if to be
lot of do it.
braggadocious.
There's a lot of do it, Mike. There's a lot of everyone supports this.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm just I know, but like I'm trying to like
Yeah.
demonstrate that like I'm not like in this like for fucking ego. And I know that like a
Yeah.
lot of people who are really mad at me right now like accuse that of being the case. And like, look, I mean, like I've like look, I mean, if you want to, I'll get vulnerable for you right now, evading going into my backstory a little bit by talking about my current story. But I mean, like I'm like living in a tiny little bungalow in LA right now, right? Like, like I'm not like fucking living in a mansion right now with my millions of dollars from like Cash App or anything like that. There's 2 bedrooms in this house. It's nice. I got like a backyard. Like I'm here with my cat. I am like like honestly, like I'm not like living like a luxurious lifestyle. I have like completely like taken, you know, look, I have no fucking I have no ego, nothing to prove. I just like honestly, and this is the reason I'm having the conversation with Alexis. I love this country. I love being close to this country. In fact, like me downsizing my life like this is not like performative humbleness. It's actually because I want to feel the texture of what makes this country exist, not be sort of separated through like 30 layers of material abstraction, like
Mhm.
peering down at the world below me from like a you know 10 bedroom mansion at the top of the Hollywood Hills. Like that's just sort of detached and sort of I've like tried to remove myself as far away from that materialistic aesthetic as I can in this like stage of my life. And so like that and so maybe what I'm doing is betraying a little bit of embarrassment in my past of like maybe being lost a little bit in that world. So once again, I'm trying to tell my story through moral growth rather than the juicy details.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting because so my latest column at the Times was about the big bad economy, basically, is how I've been
Yeah.
describing it for months. And the column is a list of books, and everyone I'm sure is going to treat it a la carte, but I want them to treat it like sort of a syllabus almost. And
Mm.
one thing that was really interesting is this idea of like ascent, right? And I was really when they're each thematic, and when we talked about the economy, I thought, well, what are we talking about anymore? Are we talking about and it was interesting because you think about the American dream, but nobody really talks about it anymore.
No.
You know, what you're talking about is the American dream, not the how they used to be like, oh, a big house at the top. I
Yeah.
grew up in LA, like at the top of the Hollywood.
Yeah.
No more. Now you're like, I want a house. I want to be able to pay for childcare. I want like maybe to retire by 75. And this idea of
No.
like
Yeah.
ascent and the Great
But here's the thing.
Awakening.
Here's the thing. This is what I've realized, everybody. Look, I've made a lot of money in my life. I've made a lot of money in my life. Let me tell you, what I've realized is this. Like, and I've paid dear personal costs that I'm not going to get into. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll write a memoir in 10 years, but I'm not getting into that right now. But here's what I'll say is that like that life sucks. The life
Mm,
with like, with like the mansions and the cars and the compounds. It's like yeah, it's like showing up at fucking Disneyland every day in your own personal little Disneyland and just like thinking about like, okay, like what if I upgrade the pool? What if I put in this new thing? What if I put in a cold water plunge? And like just
yeah.
constantly
Mm,
thinking about this. And
yeah.
I just tell you that like that becomes your whole world. It becomes all anybody in that world thinks about. It's like they're trying to like, you know, climb the sort of the elite materiality ladder. And it's like cool and it kind of like works for a while. And then you're kind of like, wait a second, like being in this place means that I can't really be close to anything that matters anymore. And then you just start to lose the forest through the trees
Yes.
and you fall through this like moral singularity, and on the other side of it, I swear to God, it is the like it is the I think Elon Musk is like probably the loneliest man on the planet.
It's
Like
very sad.
I
Yeah.
swear to God. Like
Yeah.
it is like when I like recognize like, through my own like own way of like that way is like the death of the soul, and I
Yeah.
had to find my way out of this. Just let me tell you, like
Did you ever read Babbitt? By Lewis. It was the first Pulitzer Prize winning novel or I'm sorry, the first Nobel Prize
a
winning
long
novel
time ago, a long time
so I
ago.
reread it recently, and it was fascinating because it's sort of describing what you are, well, it's what you're describing, which is that Babbitt is this character who lives in America in a sort of quintessential town, and he's living this American dream. He's doing well in sales. He goes to the country club. He has the wife. He has the children. And he's living in this community that, worships the dollar, and all under the guise of the American dream. And then he has this sort of midlife crisis, right? Because there is a strike at a union, and he supports the union basically, and it ostracizes him. He has an affair, and he for the first time in his life is, I think he says, I'm doing what I want. But then eventually what happens is he's, completely shunned by his rich friends.
Yeah.
He worries about losing it all, and his wife gets a little sick, and so suddenly he gives it all up, right? And then I realize, like, the thing is, it's just easier to stay in and smile through the void than not. And it's a part of it, like, this has always existed from the very beginning, this idea of, like, what is morally
Yeah.
what defensible.
So Canadian philosopher Charles Taylor, he's like 97 years old now, he's still alive. He has described this as sort of like the immanent malaise of the material world. Like this, like that, like this is that's immanent, by the way, guys, with an A,
Really
not an
good
E.
phrase.
Immanent. Uh immanent.
Imminent.
Nant. Malaise.
Malaise. I
Yes.
like
Of the
it.
material world. This is the phenomena. Like it just turns out that like what is meaningful to a human being, like all of us, it's like who we are, is shared experience. Like,
Yeah.
that is the depth of like, if you think about it when you're growing up, like, it's the things that you did with friends, with family, those moments that sort of give you those sort of deep connections. Like, like, this is why after tragedies happen, communities come together, and that just feels so warm because everyone's sharing in the same pain. When the emotions
Mhm.
synchronize around you, that's when like you experience like true humanity. And when you're chasing like, like the next biggest yacht, like you're fucking creating a fleet like Jeff Bezos, like I'm sorry, that guy just looks so like that guy just looks so on the other side of this divide from me.
Well,
You
you
just
have Bezos, and then you have Mackenzie.
Yeah, yeah. And like, yeah, I mean, and like Warren Buffett, like very famously never fell into this trap, right?
Right. He has
Yeah,
yeah.
and you can just see like what a happy man that man is.
He and Charles Munger, like, again, I know I dip in and out of these other worlds, but my goodness, they always looked very happy and like they were having a good time. And I
Yeah,
think that's a big thing is, I don't wanna play armchair psychologist even though that isn't a national pastime. I think that someone like Elon Musk, the kids are about just, like, sparking joy because the one thing you do know is if you're around a small child for any amount of time is they're going to teach you about joy very quickly. And
mhm,
there is this sort of, but I think you talk about questioning oneself, and
yeah,
that to me is an essential part of American identity that has been lost because it's become so defensive. Like, say what you will about all of the founders. They were
yeah.
constantly, and they were struggling with the
Oh,
moral
yeah,
universe.
oh, yeah, oh,
Like
yeah.
this
I mean,
guy,
even Jefferson, right? Like one of his 4 quotes, right, on the walls of the Jefferson Memorial, right? When he says about, like, when he talks about, you know like amending the laws and the Constitution. And he says, like, I can't remember the quote, but he makes this observation where he's just like, look, man, like he kind of says a message to the future. It's like, look, I mean, like you're probably gonna think I was barbaric by your standards in the future. And so yeah, you shouldn't feel like you have to like treat me as a moral exemplar when you're reevaluating, the structure of your constitutional law. Like I want to
Yeah.
look up. Do you know the quote I'm talking about?
I don't
Right?
know the quote. I know the quote you're talking about. I don't know it exactly.
Yeah, I'm
There, but
looking
he
it up.
says stuff like that all the time, and he's always the thing is that's what's amazing about them is they were not as lazy as we are. They were constantly putting in the work, and so this idea that you would constantly be reevaluating your society, your laws, the makeup, the hierarchy was not outside. Obviously,
Yeah,
they
I
sparked the
have it.
revolution. Okay,
I have it. I have it. So
understood.
this is one of Jefferson's quotes. This is if you go to the Jefferson Memorial on the other side of the Potomac in DC. This is actually one of the four quotes attributed to him that's carved in to the inside of the dome there. I am not an advocate for frequent changes in laws and constitutions, but laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, as new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance to keep pace with the times. We might as well require a man to wear still the coat which fitted him when a boy as civilized society to remain ever under the regime of their barbarous ancestors. Thomas Jefferson. He actually
The man
literally
could write.
he actually counseled against originalism.
Yes, he did. And in his letters, he does this constantly.
Yeah.
He's writing about, I come from Washington studies, and it's a very different situation for Washington. But in Jefferson's letters, he's constantly saying, like, maybe we should reassess the Constitution every 20 years. Amendments certainly they anticipated would happen at a far greater clip.
Yeah.
At the same time, that man was one of the first to, completely replace everyone was a member of his party. You have a lot of things that complexity to me is not a liability, but it is something we have to constantly recognize. And so when you have these people who are saying one thing and also doing another, they're like definitely passing the buck forward. And that is as essential to the American self and sort of self-identification and leadership as America itself. That has
Mm.
been around since the very beginning. And so we have that now too. We have a lot of passing the buck. The problem is it's like anything, like any Ponzi scheme, anything else, it's catching up with us
Yeah.
at a pretty rapid clip and will for the next generation. It's going to be pretty disastrous.
Mm. Yeah.
No,
Well,
a really positive note.
I mean, do you want to do you want to go there? Do you want to maybe like talk about like where we think our contingencies like move history's needle right now?
Well, I'm
Is
not
is
in the
is our
business of
audience?
predicting
Well,
the
I am.
future.
I am. I'm a strategist. I think about these things all the time. I make investment decisions based on these thoughts. Um, do we want to talk? We want to go there, or we do want to try and, or we're. I'm. I don't
We
know
can
if I want to
we can
scare
kind of go.
people.
I know. Well, so
I
I
don't
think
want to.
maybe what I am very interested in that we talked about, and then maybe to go back,
Yeah.
is that what do we do with this 250th as people in this world? And so of course I've got a pretty heavy calendar next year of events, and they all
I've
seem
already got my
great.
frame. I got my frame.
You got your friend, yeah, and
The people,
the people,
the people sovereign
the
will
people sovereign.
celebrate. Will celebrate their 250th anniversary in this struggling republic that it still loves and is trying to bring back under popular sovereign control. We will celebrate that we are still here. We are still fighting, and we are still fucking proud that the Star-Spangled Banner still flies over the land of the free and home of the brave. The brave still bravely fighting
That's true. I
to
think
tame these lands for a free people.
Oh, I well, one of the things I've been thinking about on a very practical level is, an American flag. This is something I've been struggling with, and my deadline is coming
Yeah,
up. I said I
yeah,
would figure it out. I'd make a decision very soon. And the thing is, aesthetically gorgeous. I live in a village. I'm on like a main street. Like, what you want is to see a cute little, town, like farmhouse with an American flag out front. And of course, the optics are terrible because you have everyone's going to assume a racist dwells within. But
yeah,
then at the same time, when I think about the American flag, I think about it as liberating a concentration camp. And that's how certain people ended up in America. I think about Black soldiers during the Civil War making their own.
absolutely, absolutely.
And so there is this, and that is the thing is like, um, everything's a little
Guys,
cringe, right?
guys, guys, guys,
Oh, very
look at that.
handy. Mine are
Look at that.
upstairs.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
He's ready.
I
He's
am
got
not
it.
I am not I am not ashamed. You wanna call me you wanna, like, accuse me of being jingoistic? You think, like, maybe I'm, like, think you may think I'm gonna start, like, calling them freedom fries? Is that what you think, everybody? Is that it? I mean, no, no, people died for this. People who believed in something bigger than themselves. Do not allow these reactionary fucks that have taken over our public discourse to tell you what this means. I will tell you what this means. This is the symbol of the people sovereign over these lands, united as free states into a greater United States. That's what this is. Anyways,
But it's true. It's like I think to me the flag really represents the struggle of being American. And I think to hold all those things at once is true. But I guess w- what I think is, again, it's a progressive ideal. And so what I will do is I will get one, I've decided, but I am also I'm going to put the California flag up just to confuse everyone because I'm from California.
I
Then
have
an
a California
indigenous.
flag right behind me. You can like
You
see it.
have all these, you're
I
just
mean,
like
I'm
prop,
just like,
prop,
yeah,
prop. You do. I see it. It's
absolutely.
that you see the red and the white behind him. Um,
Yeah.
well, I love that. And then I think, in addition, probably something to represent the people who lived here. So it's some sort of indigenous, which has been surprisingly hard because they didn't claim land in the way we do. And so it's been hard to figure out, is my house on this one? Is it on this one? I don't know as far as the tribal lands. And then we can go from there. But I think it has to be in conversation. And that is what being American is supposed to be about. You're supposed to be
Yes.
American, but you're
Yes.
also whatever
That's what
your
I
heritage is, whatever.
what does
Well, who
that mean?
cares?
It means we said before, right? Like when we think of America, not as a like just like not as some sort of formalism that of documents, right? Like the Constitution, but a processual entity, something that exists across time, is connected by history, right?
Yeah.
It means that like it is always becoming what it is.
Yes.
It is always in a state of becoming what it is.
Always.
And
And that's
and
like the
it
beautiful part.
yeah,
There's a
which is
good
why
children's book about,
and
yeah, go ahead.
well, which is why our moral direction is towards a more perfect union. Like that is the American heart right there.
But what we have instead is, so George Washington, when he wrote the farewell address,
Yeah.
he cut,
We
obviously
did
he
not
went through
follow his
dress.
advice. We did not follow his advice in that address. We we
Did
we went
Oh no,
we
what are you talking about? We live and die by what the founders say, which is exactly why we followed everything in his farewell address, which was like pretty. So what's crazy about it is the the prescientness of it, of course, that you already know. But then during my way of dealing with the Trump reelection was like a lot of different things. But one of them was going back and reading early drafts, which I hadn't done in a very long time, probably like 10 years. And so I read all of his drafts, all the things he discarded as he was writing it and sending, drafts to Hamilton and whomever else. And what was so interesting to me is in one of the cut parts that I had not paid attention
We're
to,
gonna
of
have to
course,
talk about
before.
Hamilton.
Yeah, we will. But you'll find
And
this really
yeah.
interesting because one of the cut parts he's like, okay, so I'm worried about the military, but I'm not so worried about the military. I was like, okay, fine. That's not
Okay.
that
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what's really interesting is he wrote, I'm really worried about a set of people who didn't really fight in the revolution and they don't do anything in their communities that are worth anything. And they're not really a part of any sort of religious order. They don't have any ties to government, but they do have a lot of money. And so what
Yeah.
I'm worried about is that they'll find a way to ingratiate themselves to the president and find a seat at the table. And then from there, it's all over because they'll just be after nothing but money. And while Washington himself was like an unrepentant capitalist, absolutely, I mean, he enslaved hundreds of people,
Yeah.
unrepentant
Yeah. Yeah.
capitalist.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why a lot of the founders were rich men who just fought the war to get richer. But what we have here is someone saying, like, exactly what. And then I saw Zuckerberg, Bezos, everyone on the dais at the inauguration, and was like, "Oh my God, it's the excised lines. It's these parts he cut from them." And it was just like it blew my mind because he saw it coming. And
Yeah.
they don't have crystal balls. I don't believe in any of that. I don't believe they knew how we would live now. If you brought them back, people are always like, "What do you think he would think now?" I'd be like, "He'd be too distracted by stoplights. He'd be too distracted. Like he wouldn't know.
I
Like
mean,
it'd take him so long to get there." This man was
yeah.
obsessed
Yeah.
with
I mean,
like
yeah. Yeah.
all
But
of
yeah.
them, with architecture, with
Yeah.
any sort of
I
technology.
mean,
So it'd
and
take
like,
him a long
oh
time.
my God. I mean, guys,
And I'd be like, "Why aren't you
you're
fighting? This is the easiest
now
one."
you're moving into the world of social epistemics, and I could just
Yeah.
geek out for like 3 hours on what you just said about stop. Well, but we will hold that for a future conversation. But
Yes. But I do think it's really interesting to think about what they thought would fell us. And in general, it's a lot of different things that are in fact enervating our society and our government and our grand democracy as it would be, and our certainly our place in the world. And we know the person's name, but it's also other things.
yeah.
And then they also, what we're lacking to do is what we're not doing is what people forget to do in their own lives, which is evolve and
Mm.
grow as people and constantly question themselves
Mhm.
and do the hard work, right? So
Yeah.
there's a great Dorothy Parker telegram where she says, "I can't look you in the phone," because she doesn't want to call her editor. Something I can very much relate to. And that is what I think we can't do in America. Like we can't look ourselves in the American flag.
Well, I mean, hmm, can't look ourselves in the American flag.
It's a little embarrassing. We should be able to do it, but I don't understand.
Yeah.
You have this way too. So where it's a little bit of like an echo chamber, but this idea that I have a, so I'm a single mom, and I always say that like the most of I'm about to have a new niece, very exciting.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wrote my brother and sister a great, I think, email about it, about what it's like and what you have to
Mhm.
know. And one of the things was apologize. You have to constantly look at yourself. Everything is a trigger, and you have to face yourself in this way. And you have to make sure that you feel good inside. Is like Dr. Becky is this person of our time, but this philosopher, if you will, this psychologist. But I do think this is
Mhm.
true, and it's all about sort of understanding that you're fallible, and that you also have to apologize constantly. And that fine, and then move on though. Don't dwell on it forever. So I just see so many issues around both parties in particular. Now I'm really jumping all over the place, but I think this is interesting. and from a philosophical point as well, morality point for sure. We have the Democrats who it's like pulling teeth to get them to apologize or admit anything, and then when they
Yeah.
do, everyone holds them to a higher bar because they said they weren't they
They
weren't those
can't, like,
people.
it's not really possible at this point. Like, the reason they can't, like, apologize, right? Like, this is an interesting place if I can point a
Yes,
divergence
please.
here. Yeah, this is why I wanna talk from these 2 perspectives. I think, like, talking I had suspected that we'd have some productive, insights here together. Uh, but in this insight here, right, like, I think what you need to think about these establishment figures in the Democratic, like the Pelosi's of the world, the Schumers of the world. It's like, you're looking at it and you correctly are recognizing like what what is sort of the perceptual reality, like outside looking in, which is that like these people don't speak for me. They speak for elite interests, elite
Mhm,
economic interests. Um and uh and uh, they've also, and to your point, like other things like real overreach, like the 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 sort of like strategic lie about masks during COVID, right? That was just like, I think everybody in the intellectual community kind of just recognizes was like fucking insane from like a social cohesion perspective. And there's just this sort of like set of incentive structures, like in this sort of what I call the technocratic elite, that just like is can't imagine a world in which they're not indispensable to power. And this creates like this sort of sense of like, well, we need to have public, campaigns around reminding people to trust the experts and not to listen to people like Tucker Carlson, and we shall educate them from within the commons that Tucker Carlson controls. That will make it impossible to even make this argument at all. So, like, there's this sort of like set of incentive structures that tells me that we're in a pre-revolutionary moment where that set of incentives is sort of locked in place and is sort of being like forced into sort of like this, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it will be a very unstable break when those interests come flaying apart. And there's interesting figures like James Tallarico,
yeah.
Gavin Newsom. I think Gavin Newsom is far more left populist than people give him credit for, actually. And I think he's going to probably surprise people like directionally with like, especially, I mean, if you think I'm wrong about that, listen to the podcast he just did with Ezra Klein at the New York Times.
Oh, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's funny to watch him as a Californian and as someone who,
Yeah.
grew up with him. I think it's interesting to watch him in this moment because we all know Gavin Newsom, and we know 2 things about him if you grew up in California. He hates 2 things: homeless
Yeah.
people and Republicans. And one of those things, though you see him kind of changing the way he talks about things as he's always wanted to be president. That's always been clear. And James A. Garfield said that the only difference between him and everyone else in Congress was he didn't have presidential fever. And
I don't think, by the way, I don't think all ambition is driven by narcissism.
no,
Sometimes it's driven by moral audacity.
but all like it's funny. I was in this when I was working on the Washington series for the History Channel. I was in a writer's room with a bunch of people, and Doris Kearns Goodwin was
Yeah.
also like she would come in and out as the executive producer. And she came in, and once I was like, Doris, these guys are like real like extremes here, and we have to sort of make them understand that this is not how this works.
Yeah.
And so it is something to really watch, and it's fundamental. I think he had, James Tallarico is new and he's fresh, and I don't even know. Everyone apparently says his name wrong, so maybe I just did.
I
But
think Tallarico is right.
is
Tallarico
that
is right,
right?
I think. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good. But
Yeah.
he's good
Yeah.
because he doesn't just represent the coasts. But he will not. He has a populism, but it's different than Newsom's. And I wonder if
No,
how you see
we
that.
need an American populism, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Which is
it's what one needs certainly to change this situation.
it's a policy, or it is a policy vision that starts with the word we. and like that no like unselfish, morally adjusted person can listen to the completion of that sentence and say, whether I'm like, you know, a like Republican or a Democrat or a leftist or like even some reactionary form of right winger, that it's like whatever I think is true about these culture wars or whatever like that, that is something that I agree we should all do together. That is that is the I think the narrative box into which true if people a true sort of new FDR like moment is possible if somebody can complete that sentence.
Oh, that would be so nice. I'm a half an hour from I'm not even a half an hour, I'm 15 minutes from Hyde Park, from Roosevelt's historic home, and I go all the time for my soul, for my well, because they also have
Yeah.
very nice trails. But and also I do want to say as an aside, libraries in California, Nixon, Reagan, all around, FDR, they all are places where you can really go and engage in a way that I think are not normally not everyone knows that these are the places to go, and these are the places to not only see exhibitions, but to enjoy events and all sorts of things. I go all the time for various things. I went on the 4th of July. It was great. For some reason, they had mules. But I think one of the things that we need, so when Kennedy entered Congress, the Senate, not that he had been in the House of Reps, he was elected to be a senator.
Mhm.
So was Joseph McCarthy. And they had this sort of like, what are you doing? Who's winning America's hearts? And of course, McCarthy was winning for a while. It's
Yeah.
not, I don't mean to say that they were competing against each other, not at all.
Mhm.
But at the same time, they were both trying to ascend and they were figuring out in different ways. And Kennedy is like evolving, learning, trying to get on committees, trying to do things. And then you have McCarthy, who is got this campaign, right?
Yeah.
And America, for a while, he was winning, right? And nobody really, in ostensibly, Kennedy was losing. He did not get the vice presidential nomination. He does not get to a lot of things that he wanted. But
Mhm.
Americans tire of that kind of, I'm going to swear because you have been, so I'm
Yeah,
allowed. They
absolutely, go
tire of
for it.
that kind of bullshit,
Yeah.
and they tire of divisiveness, and they realize, as I hope they do, I don't want people to be punished for the way that they voted, and I don't want us all to be punished for the way our neighbors
Yeah.
voted.
Yeah.
But
It's insane.
but they're going to feel this. Everyone, I mean,
Yeah.
they already do. Everything is more
Yeah.
expensive. Everything is more
Yeah,
expensive this
so
holiday season.
look, I have a really strong point of view on this from, like, a narrative framing perspective for, like, Gavin, if you're listening to me or
Be
anyone else who's
positive.
planning. No,
Mm,
I'm gonna give you my advice.
yes.
Kamala, if you insist on running, I think you shouldn't, but if you do, here's some advice. Um, um, you have to understand, right, that, um, like and I'm being 100% honest with you. I'm talking to you, not Alexis, I'm gonna talk past you now. So, like,
Yes.
I'm not addressing you anymore. I am now addressing the
Kamala.
tech the
The
technocratic
oh,
class. I'm addressing
okay.
the technocratic class. Kamala Harris Kamala Harris, um, like, honestly, like, even, even Shapiro in Pennsylvania, even him. I understand he's an effective governor. He's running things swell, but that's we don't need we need we need something more right now, right?
Yeah.
Um, we need to start off by thinking about the relationship that we have with this processual entity that we call America is one that comes with responsibility. It is the social contract. Yes. You didn't sign it. Um, you weren't consulted. You don't get a lawyer in the delivery room where you review the contract. It turns out that, like, your life exists because, in part, because of all of the social order that this society coordinates together. Um, the fact that, you know, maybe your your one of your family members or your ancestors would be dead if not for some subsidy of the government, some social security check that like made the difference, that allowed you to come into the world, because the system is here to sort of hold us all up, not just protect our property rights. We should talk a little bit about libertarians on that. And so yeah, like you're actually born with a little bit of debt. The debt that you owe to your ancestors, their collective effort. And so starting from there, you kind of recognize that you owe something to this country. And part of what you owe to this country is to do everything you can in good faith to make this republic work, which means accepting that you can't just like kick your fellow citizens who voted for Donald Trump into the ocean. That would be genocide. And we're not going to do that
No.
because that is insane. That is not a civilized society. Like, there is no reason to have this republic if we would ever like allow ourselves to do such a thing. So, realizing that these are your fellow countrymen and women. Sorry, I'm being pulled into gendered language given the neoclassical prose I'm kind of following, but I'm getting to my point, which is that um yeah, you should want to find some way to agree across difference at some higher level, at some higher notion of like, as mad as I am at you that you believe X, Y, and Z, and I would really like you to stop believing X, Y, and Z and believe, A, B, and C instead. And we are going to have lots of those continued disagreements in the future. We also agree that it's much better to disagree about those things than like a level of disagreement which removes the possibility of peaceful disagreement at all when we get back to what Hobbes called our state of nature. When the disputes get solved by other means that we would all preferably like to live without, because I mean, because then only the powerful survive in that world. They're the only ones who can afford the bodyguards, and they're the only ones like, this is not a world that we want to move into. So starting from there, yes, you should forgive your fellow Americans for voting for Donald Trump, because your failure to do so is against your own good interests, as I've just described to you at the depths of our best political philosophy that we've built up over the last 300 years in the Western tradition.
I think that's totally right. I'm so sorry that we have to end this, but it reminds me a lot what you're saying. I always have to bring it back to presidents. And Lincoln had all these really challenging conversations with people. Um, he would be disrespected by leaders in the army constantly. He would show up at their house and they would, not really come to greet the president of the United States because they didn't agree with him. He would sit there, and his point of having these conversations was not to dress someone down the way we constantly see coming out of the Oval now, or, wherever
Yeah.
he moves. And it wasn't to win. Right? Because you are not talking about winning
Yeah, but
arguments
before you
either.
go, before you go though,
Understanding. Yeah.
before you go, James Woodruff just said something really important, and
Yes.
I want to agree with him here.
Okay.
There are people that have intentionally, like, there is a difference between who voted for Trump and the people who are colluding for Trump,
Oh, yeah.
knowing what they do. So I
Yes.
mean, like like someone like
And
Carolyn.
same with Biden, the people who sort of
Yeah.
protected Biden during that
Yeah.
time.
So
Yeah.
like Carolyn Levitt, for example, knows that she's lying to the American people.
Yeah, she knows.
She knows that she's telling strategic lies, so the MAGA base doesn't realize like the monster behind the curtain. She knows she's doing that. And so I forgive the people who are being lied to, because they are being like, like they are like for whatever they believe Carolyn Levitt. And like, I mean, I don't think they should. And I can criticize them for thinking like, hey, like, why don't you realize that she's lying to you? We can have that conversation, but I can at least empathize like the fact that they don't think they're being lied to. So the liar is the one who I would like to see in handcuffs at the end of this.
Accountability is something, and I think that's what we're showing on, is that, a lot of the reason we're here is because there has never been accountability within the presidency in particular. And
Mhm.
we didn't have any after Watergate. Pardon? Except for another time. But I think you're right. We need to and January 6th, we need to see accountability in order to move forward as a country. And as much as I talk about, tolerance and all of this, I want to see some people in handcuffs too.
Yeah, well, then we've come to, I think, a wonderful place to stop. This was really great, this
It
was really great,
was.
Alexa. I would love to do this
It's not
again.
enough
This is a
time. Yeah. I would love
yeah.
to do it again too. And thank you everyone for joining. It was really
Thank
nice to see the numbers in your
thank you.
comments.
Thank you. And I'll post the recording so everyone else who wasn't able to be with us today can enjoy our fruitful conversation. Thank you, and happy holidays
Yeah.
to you, Alexis, and to everyone
Everyone.
watching at home. And here's to a year that's better than this one coming up on us. Thanks.
Yes. You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.